Welcome to Box Out Banter, where we talk about the Sixers and probably mostly the Sixers today. I'm Chris Okamura. Joining me as always, Mr. Jordan Christmas. So Jordan, I'm not even gonna give you an intro. I'm just gonna sit and go for it, man. You talk about your Sixers.
So, you're wrong about one thing. This isn't going to be mostly Sixers because nobody wants to hear about this team. Not even Sixer fans want to hear about this team. I don't want to hear about this team. I thought, being a day removed from yesterday, I would be, my mind would be clearer. I had some coffee, some water, thought about it at work. I went back to the office at work last night after the game, and I work overnight, so I was by myself thinking about it.
Yeah, you were tweeting for hours afterwards. I was like, man.
Hey, sometimes you got to tweet through it. Sometimes you got to tweet through it. It's not personal stuff, but sometimes you got to tweet through it. So where do we start? So I guess we'll start with four things. 2 points of them I'm going to expand on, but the other two, they're going to be really quick points. First one, because I just got in not a Twitter argument, but somebody that I know replied to one of my tweets saying, should Embiid be to blame for the Sixers blowing a 26-point lead in Game 5 yesterday? No. Embiid and Seth Curry are absolved from criticism. Embiid is playing on one leg, and he's putting up a dominant playoff run, and he is putting his body on the line, and his teammates just aren't showing up, which I will elaborate on later. So no, point number one, not Embiid's fault. He is absolved from any criticism. Game 4, the second half, very fair. You can rip him apart for that one. He was awful. He also looked really lethargic, and that knee was really bothering him, but he's known to embellish things a little bit. So yes, Embiid had an awful second half of Game 4. Still shouldn't have blown that lead. But point number 2, I'm going to start with Tobias Harris, because this was the first bad game he's had of the playoffs, and this was my fear with him going into the playoffs, is that when he is the only one that is your secondary reliable perimeter creator and he looks bad, the offense looks even worse. Simmons' flaws, which I will get into Ben Simmons, I'll save that one for last. Simmons' flaws get exacerbated. The lack of above average guard play for the 76ers gets exacerbated. And it becomes really bad. And in the fourth quarter yesterday, as the Sixers were slowly blowing this 26-point lead, Tobias Harris was noticeably scared. Passing up open shots, passing it into crazy open space where Hawks defenders were to try to get the ball to Embiid, and it would either get deflected. He had a really crucial turnover out of a timeout when the Hawks cut the lead to 2. And right out of the timeout, Tobias turned it over trying to get the ball to Embiid. Tobias was god-awful yesterday. Just god-awful. But he has been good for most of these playoffs, but that still does not mean that his flaws are very concerning, and why I was scared when we traded for him, and why I am scared of the contract he has, even though he has redeemed a lot of value in it. Okay, whatever. He was also bad in the second half of Game 4. I should mention that. So the last 6 quarters, he's been bad. Doc Rivers, I do not want to hear any more criticism of Brett Brown ever again. Because while Brett Brown had flaws, at least he would try shit. At least he would try different lineups. At least he would try different combinations. And yeah, he might have been stubborn sometimes, like Game 2 in Boston back in the 2017 or the 2018 playoffs. The Sixers had an 18-point lead in Boston, looked like they were on the way to win, and Brett Brown just let an 18-0 run happen, and boom, the lead evaporates. Didn't call a timeout, didn't make any adjustments, anything like that. This is the worst coach series I have ever seen from the Sixers. And I watched Doug Collins coach teams. This is the worst I have ever seen a coach a playoff series for the Sixers.
But Jordan,
oh, here we go.
Doc Rivers Doc Rivers
I know what you're
coached
gonna
the
say.
'08 Celtics. He coached the '08 Celtics. That's all he needs to say.
He coached the '08 Celtics. The crazy thing is people will still swear he's a great coach. This isn't 2010, dog. Like, he's an okay coach who is a shitty playoff coach. He can't make adjustments. I'm sitting here. I watched the Jazz game this morning, right? Because I wasn't going to bother watching the Jazz Clippers game after just getting my soul snatched out of my body like it was, what's that guy from Mortal Kombat? Shang Tsung, who steals souls. I couldn't watch the Clippers game today. I'm sitting here watching Ty Lue, though, all playoffs, do Walter White level chemistry experiments, trying different lineups for every series, adjusting game to game, adjusting half by half, quarter by quarter, play by play. Oh, sprinkle in a little DeMarcus Cousins minutes here and see if that works. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, we'll start small. Okay, Luke Kennard didn't play for the first 4 games of the Dallas series, brings him in, and all of a sudden, that's the right button he pushes. I'm watching Ty Lue try shit and try to win. And then I'm sitting here watching Doc Rivers miss the most basic adjustments, the most low-hanging fruit adjustments, not attacking a backcourt of Lou Williams and Trae Young, who are absolutely torching us in the fourth quarter, and we're not attacking them on the other end, mainly because we don't have credible guard. You can't rely on George Hill to create stuff, but you're not even running a one pick and roll to get Lou Williams or Trae Young into some action. You're still running stupid dribble handoffs with Dwight Howard at the top of the key. You're still giving Dwight Howard minutes in this series when outside of game 3, he has been awful. Every time Dwight Howard checks into the game, every minute he is on the court, that is a win for the Hawks. Trae Young will find his ass, and he'll be like, come up here, let's dance, let's get you in a screen and roll, and it's either a floater, or because Dwight is slower now in his older age and isn't fleet of foot on the perimeter, Trae Young will get a lob to Clint Capella, or Trae Young will do a bounce pass to John Collins, or Trae Young will get crowded and he'll kick it out to the corner. Dwight Howard minutes should be non-existent. He hasn't even tried Simmons at the 5 lineups yet in this series. Last series, he was forced to do it because Embiid missed game 4, and then he started Mike Scott instead, which was stupid. And now you're still playing Dwight Howard, and you're not even trying Simmons and 4 guards, or even Simmons and Harris with Thibault, Shake Milton, or George Hill. And look, I get it. The Sixers have an up and down bench, which, by the way, brings me to my next point. Why are we still playing 4-man bench lineups? It was already an issue that Doc Rivers played an all bench lineup in game 1, which, we all know what happened there. He kind of just watched a 17-0 run happen and left his bench unit out there. Like, he was like, how Phil Jackson did the I'm going to let my guys figure it out and not call a timeout thing? He did that with
That's like a classic coaching thing.
He did that with the fucking bench unit in game 1.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I'm probably going to let a few cuss words slip because I am still heated.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I was laughing because my favorite comment that I saw was Lou is in the huddle with the Hawks saying, don't worry, they're not going to make any adjustments.
It's crazy. The Tobias Harris 4-man, the Tobias Harris plus 4 bench players lineup has not worked all series except for game 3. It hasn't actually worked all playoffs. And
it's kind of fluky.
It was fluky. And that was the thing. That gave Doc Rivers the credibility. That gave Doc Rivers the gusto to try it again. And it hasn't worked. Tobias Harris is not that type of player to be the life raft, so to speak, of a bench unit. And so why not put Simmons in there? Oh, but wait, you're still playing Simmons with Dwight Howard, which if Ben Simmons doesn't have a stretch 5 playing next to him that's not Joel Embiid, you might as well just throw those minutes in the toilet because you're not getting any production out of that. And don't even get me started with, his Doc Rivers enabling of Ben Simmons. I get it. Doc Rivers is a player's guy. He's a rah-rah guy. He gives his players confidence and stuff like that. That is the issue. That is why he keeps playing these damn bench units. At least put 2 starters in there, not 1, and definitely not the worst quote-unquote star out of the 3. Like,
Yeah. I just don't
don't
understand.
understand.
I think a lot of Doc's trust in Tobias comes with the amount of time they spend together, and I think it's misguided.
And he's been good this year, but there are obvious flaws in Tobias Harris's game that should scream at you, this guy cannot be carrying a bench unit by himself in a playoff setting. It works in the regular season, and you saw me tweeting already. They didn't experiment one time this regular season. I could count on my hands how many times they experimented with stuff, but only because of injury, which is ridiculous. Like, Doc Rivers ran the all bench lineup all season. And what was my we talked about it all the time on this podcast. I said it when he got hired. He is a plan A coach. And when that plan A doesn't work, he just shrugs his shoulders and is like, well, I'm going to try it again. You know, coaches will be like, we're not going to change who we are, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, that's some Mike Budenholzer shit. And Doc Rivers is taking notes
even
on
when
it.
even when you have coaches that do like we're going to play our style and do whatever, there's still micro adjustments that you make within that style to make it fit and to make it function.
Yes.
You don't just like leave it alone.
Exactly.
And it's something that we'll talk about when we talk about the Bucks, but like they're just, both of them are just doing things where it doesn't work and they just leave it and they let it sit and they're like, it'll work itself out.
And it's so
I trust in my system. And it's like, no.
The fixes are so obvious too. Like, I don't understand why we don't run like even a little bit more pick and roll. I don't like here. Okay, I will give Doc credit for this adjustment he made in Game 3. Ben Simmons ghosted in the first half, didn't want anything to do with the ball in Game 3, even though the Sixers were, in the midst of a blowout, or not in the midst of a blowout, but they were leading at halftime by 8 points. Doc Rivers put Ben Simmons on the block, and he started picking teams apart. And then that opened up his aggressiveness. He started attacking the basket, and it opened things up. Where was that in these last 2 games? And I understand they were up big, but you can't. That's the other thing too. In the playoffs, when you're up big like that, you got to stomp them out. This isn't the 2010 NBA anymore. 20-point leads are so fragile now with the 3-point shooting and the spacing and the pace and more possessions that it's irresponsible. It is irresponsible to not, shorten your rotation, man. Like, this isn't a 9-man rotation still. We're still doing this.
Yeah.
Like, we're really still doing this. And then let me get. Anyway, I hope Daryl Morey, the Sixers ownership, they did everything ass backwards like the Sixers usually do. They hired Doc Rivers first, and then Daryl Morey became available, and then they got him. Doc Rivers is not Daryl Morey's hire. I hope Morey makes some changes. Doc Rivers is going to make
Carlisle.
Rick Carlisle might be looking at the Bucks and like, we have I'm going to put Giannis at center. I like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. And he's going to look at the Sixers and be like, I have this mega star in Embiid, and then I have this point guard who can't shoot, alleged point guard that can't shoot and doesn't want anything. Well, the shooting's not the part of it. This brings me to my point about Ben Simmons, because I'm done with Doc. He should not. I was lukewarm on the hire. I wanted D'Antoni, Ty Lue, anybody else but Doc Rivers. It was a lukewarm hire, not creative,
Speaking of lukewarm hires, do you want Luke W. himself?
You want who?
You want Luke Walton?
No, I don't, and I hope the Kings keep it. It's honestly incredible that a lot of coaches got fired and it wasn't Luke Walton. Luke Walton wasn't one of them. But
yeah, crazy.
This brings me.
Carlisle didn't get fired technically. He left under his own accord.
Well, we'll talk about
We'll talk about that.
But this brings me to my last point. Ben Simmons. And I wouldn't say I've been a Ben Simmons defender. I like Ben Simmons. I've said he's a good player with some very glaring flaws. But it is now over. If he is your second best player on an alleged contender, there's a ceiling. There just is. You're not going to win the championship with Ben Simmons as your second best player. And not this version of Ben Simmons, where it's not even the 3-point shooting, Chris. It's It's
shooting at all.
it's
Even
shooting
laying the
at
ball
all, not looking at the rim, and his free throw shooting is so bad now. He doesn't even want the ball in the fourth quarter. He will hand it off to Seth Curry or whoever wants to do that stupid dribble handoff with him, and he'll go right to the dunker spot. He won't post up. He won't even run that stupid snug pick and roll that him and Embiid run where Simmons goes to the other block, or when Embiid goes to Simmons when he's posting up on the block and does like a little snug screen near the basket that hardly works half the time because you could easily switch that because you're 2 feet apart from each other. You're running none of that. You're not here. And I have some stats to pepper you with too. So in back-to-back fourth quarters now, Ben Simmons has taken 0 shots. Not even like one terrible shot or a heave or whatever. 0 field goal attempts. 0.
Yeah.
That is
to me it's a lack of aggression, and like it's not acceptable.
And we've been asking for this aggression for 3 years now. Like he'll turn it on for a month and a half, 2 months, and then he'll stop, or an injury will happen and he'll come back and he'll be the same tentative player. Like the Hawks do not have any great defenders on that team. Like DeAndre Hunter's out. Cam Reddish has been dealing with an Achilles injury. Chris Dunn has been gone since the start of the season. You can't take Danilo Gallinari off the dribble. You can't, you do your little dumb right-handed flip shot over John Collins. Like, you won't even attempt the only credible shot you have, your right-handed little flip shot hook thing that I don't even know what the hell it is. You don't even want to try that. Like, it's not just the shooting. It's the free throw shooting. It's the lack of touch. He's been the same damn offensive player skill-wise since his second year. And the Sixers have done everything to accommodate him. Shooters. Okay, we signed Al Horford because we think Ben Simmons can improve because he's the point guard, quote unquote. That was a disaster. We go back to the shooting. New coach, new style. Joel Embiid has morphed into an MVP mega destroyer and arguably the best player in the world when healthy. And Simmons is still the same. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, I love his defense. I love his playmaking, but he's not even playmaking anymore. He's not even looking at the rim. He's not. And then when he does drive to the rim, he kicks it out. He flails and kicks it out to nobody or to a player who's in a bad position. Like, the only assist he got in the second half yesterday was to Furkan Korkmaz for a bad 3. It was an awful shot that went in. Like,
yeah, I think the
at
problem
some
that I always
point,
had with Simmons, and this is the same thing. This is the conversation that we had earlier in the season, where I was saying the thing with Ben Simmons, I don't need him to shoot threes. I just need him to shoot and like spread the floor a little bit, so it opens up his playmaking so much. Because when you're not looking to score, if people know that you're not looking to score, it makes it so easy to defend you.
John Collins was below the free throw line yesterday. That doesn't embarrass you? Like,
well, that's how Kobe used to play Rondo, and then Rondo worked on it a ton, and now he's like a decent 3-point shooter, right? And you're like, oh, well, this is what you need to do in your career to work on something. I don't know what Ben Simmons does in the offseason because he clearly doesn't shoot, and if he does, he's not willing to do it in a game. Like, he's not practicing enough where it's confident for him.
He's not willing to. That's the other problem with Ben Simmons. And I'm reading a piece from Kyle Neubeck, who covers the Sixers for Philly Voice. He's one of the best beat writers in the NBA. And he made this point. Simmons has been willing. It's apparent that Simmons' unwillingness to change has really dragged this team down. It is very apparent that he wants to win things his way. He wants to be a drive and kick guy. He wants to be a great defender. And it's like, no, like, you have to, it's year 5 now. And you don't think something should change? Like, even your left-handed form, which you shoot with the wrong hand, by the way, you should at least try switching to the right hand. But even then, his left-handed shooting form, it's the same. There's no mechanical tweaks, nothing. And it's obviously a mental thing now, which he admitted last night. So now it's a mental thing, and that's why he's been running away in the fourth quarter from the ball. And I hate using that term because I think that could be a little harsh at times, but that's the facts. He would give the ball to a guard or give the ball to Embiid and run to the dunker spot and do nothing. Oh, and by the way, Trae Young went off in the second half, and he was guarding him, and he didn't even play good defense in the second half. Like, at some point, And like I said, the Simmons debate is really polarizing. There's good points on both sides of the argument. I've always been in the camp of keep Simmons unless there is a player a tier above him where you can make Simmons the centerpiece of a trade where you don't have to give up a bunch of draft picks, etc. to get that player. You could just say, hey, look, here's Ben Simmons and then here's a few other pieces and then we'll trade for Harden or whoever, right? Well, now it's time. Ben Simmons would be a great third piece on a championship contender. Unfortunately, the big collar, Brian Colangelo, and Elton Brand fucked all of Sam Hinkie's assets down the toilet. They fucked it all off. And the chance of getting a perimeter scorer, a perimeter guard to pair with Simmons and Joe, which would have been the ideal trio puzzle piece, failed. They failed at getting the guard. So now Simmons is your second best player, and now we know that he can't be your second best player. He's a great utility third option guy. I would love to magically take Bradley Beal and place him in a Simmons and Embiid core. That would be nasty. Right?
Or even someone like CJ McCollum, like a step down below that. Someone like that, right?
But now
just having that available.
But we don't have Hinkie's assets anymore. We don't have high draft picks anymore. Now I am of the business of we cannot waste Joel Embiid's prime. So whether it's Lillard, whether it's Beal, and even to a lower extent, I could talk myself into trading for CJ McCollum.
You want Kyle Kuzma?
Yeah. I mean, at least Kyle Kuzma could space the floor.
On behalf of Laker fans, we'll give you Kyle Kuzma.
I know you got Ben Simmons is a good player, and honestly, with the way this team is constructed, the best isn't necessarily brought out of him. I've always thought the Simmons and Embiid fit was fine, but not perfect. But Simmons does need his own team to bring the best out of him, and you'll win a lot of games. The problem is you won't go far in the playoffs, I feel. But he's still a good player, and so I would trade him. I think something's got to change. There's no way to come back from this. Even if they come back and win this series, whoop-de-fucking-do. You should have beat this team in 5. You're clearly the better team, and the Hawks just came in and stole the games that you gave away. Like, the Sixers literally...
I think this speaks to Doc more than anything. And that's something that you could probably in the first bit, where...
He publicly enabled Ben too. That's the crazy. It's funny you brought that up.
Look what happened with the Clippers. They got big leads, they gave them up, and they lost to a worse team. Theoretically a worse team, right? Then you take this year, and the Sixers doing the same exact thing. At what point is this a trend with Doc, and people stop calling him a good coach?
Yeah. Yep.
Like I don't get how this can happen time and time again, and it's still it's not Doc, it's the team.
Like,
and then also how is Doc this players coach that always gets players to come together and be a team or whatever, but always has dysfunctional teams?
Outside of the 08 Celtics, or outside of the Celtics, that whole era, not just the 08 season, and some of the Magic.
Even the 08 Celtics, they had Rondo, Ray Allen problems.
Yeah, towards the end, you're right, they did. Those early Magic teams, I didn't hear much. Well, I haven't even read much about like if there was turmoil or not. I imagine there wasn't because T-Mac or Grant Hill was injured a lot also, and it was the T-Mac show. But yeah.
T-Mac said that he wasn't happy there, so he's talked about that publicly.
I just don't get it at this point. Like at some point we have to say
because
that
Doc's
Rivers
a good guy.
At some point, we have to say that the game passed by Doc probably somewhere in like 2014. Definitely after that, the Clippers Rockets collapse that he had. And that's the other thing. So the last 2 postseasons, I got this from First Take. These are this graphic from First Take. I don't listen to First Take. But the last 2 postseasons, all the blown leads. 2021 76ers, 26 points, Doc Rivers. 2020 Clippers, 21 points, Doc Rivers. 2020 Clippers, 19 points, Doc Rivers. 2021 Mavericks, 19 points, Rick Carlisle. 2021 76ers, the 18 points in Game 4, Doc Rivers. Mike Budenholzer in Game 5 the other night. Then Brad Stevens last year. And then the 2020 Clippers again, 16-point lead, blown. All Doc Rivers, there's 8 coaches on this, or there are 8 names on this list, and 5 of them are Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
Like,
again,
it's Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers. Like, for me. Like,
yeah. And again, this goes back to the thing we were talking about with Ben, where we talked about this beginning of the year. I agree with you. It's not the 3-point shooting, but he at least has to take shots.
Yes, 1 corner 3 a game. That is literally what all beat writers have been asking Ben to do for 3 years. Can you take 1 corner 3 a game? We see you take it pregame. It looks fine. Like, it's not like we're going to meme you if you airball. Well, Twitter will Twitter as always or whatever. But, like, we want you taking at least 1 corner 3. I want you finishing with your left hand. He has no touch with his left hand, dude. Like, no touch whatsoever. When he lets that thing go off his left palm, it looks like a bowling ball. Like, and he won't switch to the correct hand. Like, Ben Simmons is a player that is prideful. I respect that. He's talented. He definitely improved as a defender to become a defensive player of the year caliber player. But his unwillingness to change, his unwillingness to relinquish the ball as a point guard and this is the messed up thing, he's our best ball handler and passer. So when he's out of the game because teams are either hacking him or he disappears and goes to the dunker spot, you're leaving it up to average-ass ball handlers. Like, we can't Seth Curry has been amazing all playoffs. We cannot rely on Seth Curry to be our main guard right now. And by the way...
Plus, that's not his game.
By the way... That's not
what he's there to do.
NBA teams make runs. You've seen basketball in your time, Chris. NBA teams will make runs eventually, right? We weren't going to lead by 26 all game. But you know what happens when a team makes a run? Their star perimeter player, they either take one possession where they're like, okay, fuck this, I'm going to the rim and I'm either getting fouled or I'm scoring. They stop the bleeding in some way. And that's the other thing too. It's the situational awareness within the game, not just like the big picture of the series. The situational possession awareness in a game that we see all the time. So we've watched basketball for a long time. There's ebbs and flows. The situational awareness is just not there with him. Like, at least Draymond Green, who can't shoot for shit, at least he's involved in offense in crunch time. He's calling out sets. He's getting his team settled down. He's getting passes to cutters. He'll crash the offensive glass. Simmons does none of that. You have to pull it out of him. It's frustrating. And so at this point, I would trade it. Well, I imagine they're not. I don't think Daryl Morey is. He's coming back with the same team this year. That's the other thing, too. When you blow a lead like this, can you imagine? Did you think after the game that Joel Embiid wasn't pissed off at his alleged co-star for him ghosting on offense? The dude is playing on a torn meniscus. He hurt his other knee yesterday, which that went under the radar, and that looked bad. But he got up. He's putting his body on the line because he wants to win a championship for Philadelphia. And then he's looking at Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris not wanting anything to do with the damn ball in the fourth quarter. Like, that, at some point, that's got to mentally fracture the team. Like, and trust me, I've been begrudgingly reading articles from Sixer writers. Like, that has got to be a fracture point. Like, there is no coming back from this. I don't care if they win this series now. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be watching the damn game tomorrow, and it God forbid a Game 7. But after this season, there's no way you could come back with this. There isn't. You have to.
Yeah.
I would try every possible avenue. If Dame Lillard really is unhappy in Portland, if Neil O'Shea, the guy who throws 10,000 people under the bus, makes another dumb move, and Dame wants out, I would do everything in my power to try to pry Dame out of Portland. I would do everything in my power to try to pry Bradley Beal, even to a lesser extent, out of Washington. And then even if you talk me into it and it was a CJ McCollum and Ben Simmons trade straight up, because CJ McCollum had a bad playoffs too, so maybe you could do a one-up trade, I would do that. And I will take the sacrifice in passing to give extra spacing and have a above average guard who can at least get me an off the dribble three and get to the line. Because at this point, it's ridiculous. Joel Embiid is a monster, and he's getting triple and double teamed. In the fourth quarter, 4 guys are in his space because nobody else wants the ball. It's ridiculous, man. So that's all I got. I'm sorry. Sorry I took up the time. But it is partly we co-own this podcast, and so I did the Archer thing, and in Archer he's like, I'm commandeering this boat. I commandeered the first 30 minutes of this podcast, but I am frustrated. Like, if the Sixers lose, like I told you, there's no excuse for the Sixers to not make the conference finals. This is not the Toronto Raptors second round opponent. This is not the Brad Stevens up and coming Boston Celtics or whatever when they had home court advantage. The Atlanta Hawks are a good team. Trae Young's going to be a star, and he's definitely solidified his trajectory I think he's going to be on after this playoff run. But the Hawks aren't like a contender. They're an inferior opponent. It's clear. The Sixers are the better team, but the Hawks are mentally tougher, and they can manufacture easier shots because they actually have guys who are willing to shoot and dribble. So that's it.
Yeah. Well said. Well put.
Real quick before we move on, how do you feel about Ben right now? Is it the same? Do you have any slight diverging or?
No, we had this discussion before. I was always lower on Ben than you were. I even think I still believe that he still needs to make not threes, but he needs at least a mid-range shot or something to just at least give him space and make him a threat, not just at the rim. Because it's so easy to defend someone at the rim, right? You just wait for them. If they're not taking at least mid-range jumpers, there's no reason to even guard them out there. And he's not creating anything if no one's biting at him taking the shot. So, like, for me, at least you need to expand your range at least a little bit here, which is what I've kind of been proud of Giannis for, being able to, we'll talk about him in a second, but being proud of him to at least be able to hit mid-range jumpers and threes. He's willing to take them now. I think he just needs to, I think he's too excited to take them now. He needs to reel it back a little bit.
Right.
But I think, like, I'm proud of him for being able to at least have that foresight of, like, hey, this isn't working, and let me work on this. And you can see the improvement year to year. Where with Ben, I just don't know where it's coming from. Like, I don't know what he thinks of himself, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if he thinks, like, oh, I don't need to do this, or, like, I'm good where I'm at, or, like, people need to adjust to me. Like, I don't know where, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what is.
And he's been able. The thing is, he's had a weird offensive season, and that's been hidden under the fact that Joel Embiid has been arguably. I thought if he had stayed healthy, he was going to be the MVP. Like, Joel Embiid's MVP season hid Ben Simmons' weird offensive stretch, and the free throw thing, man. Like. And here's the thing. This version of Ben Simmons, it could work in Portland because he actually has guards that could dribble, shoot, etc. The Sixers, I have long labored the Sixers' lack of that skill in that department, right? But with this team and with that contract and with your draft status and you wanting to be the point guard, we need you to improve, my guy. We at least need you to take not 0 shots.
Yeah.
Like,
you usually shoot.
Like, just anything. But I have no faith. Doc Rivers gave some erroneous quote today. I don't know if you saw me tweet about it, but he was like, one of the players asked me if I had ever lost a game 5 at home in the past and we won the series. And he was like, yeah, the 2015 series versus the Spurs. And I was like, man, ain't nobody asked Doc that shit. Like, no player asked Doc that shit. If somebody asked Doc that question, then this series really is over. Like, it's over tomorrow at 7:30 Pacific time. It's over. Like, come on, man. Like, nobody asked Doc that question. And I have no faith in Doc Rivers. Could the Sixers? It's not unreasonable to think the Sixers could still win this series in 7, but I don't feel great about it. And quite frankly, I just want to move forward to the 2022 offseason to see what Daryl Morey does. So, anyway, I was hoping we would talk about Kevin Durant's historic performance and Bud's all-time choke job at the beginning of the podcast. But, the Sixers, they did a choke job in Game 4. The Bucks were like, let me one-up you, hold my beer. And then the Sixers were like, no, you hold my beer. And then they topped that. And, but anyway, let's move on. So you wanted to talk about the Bucks-Nets game, Game 5?
Yeah, I think less so than
Well, obviously we need to
KD,
talk about it.
I think less so than KD, because KD, I think that's something that you can come across and to be like, yeah, that's an all-time great game. Like, there's not really much else to say other than like historic performance, right?
I do feel bad because everybody is focused on the Bucks, and I know we will both be focused on the Bucks and specifically Mike Budenholzer. But Kevin Durant had an all-time historic game.
Oh yeah, but there's just not much we can talk about other than like, yeah, Kevin Durant. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not really much else to pile on there other than like praise, which again we already know what Kevin Durant's capable of, and it's an absolutely incredible game. The thing that I want to talk about is the misuse of Giannis here and what he's good at.
Okay, so
and
before you go, let me ask you this, because there's a good follow on Twitter. His name is Jason Maples. He's a good follow. He started this agenda. When are we gonna just move Giannis and AD to the 5? Like, when are we just gonna cut the BS? Like, Giannis is a 5. Like, Anthony Davis is a 5. There's no reason in this series, at least, to see Brook Lopez play drop coverage all the time and watch.
I think it's weird. So I think it's weird because I think, like, in my brain, right? In my brain, AD is a power forward in the same way Tim Duncan was.
But his best position was center, like Tim Duncan.
Right. And then also, I think that Giannis, I for some reason, I view Giannis as a 3, but I know he's not.
Yep.
And but like in my head, for some reason, I have like Giannis is a 3, AD's a 4.
It's those 4 years of watching Giannis, being amazed at Giannis dribbling full court and dunking on somebody in transition that made you think he was still that it's imprinted in our brains now, I feel.
But like, so I think my thing is like, you could use the thing with Giannis, and I'll get into the Giannis discussion here, is Giannis doesn't have a move to get around someone. Like, he can get one-on-one, but if he doesn't get a step, he has no move to like shake someone. Like, he can't dribble. Like, he can dribble, he doesn't have a move. He doesn't have a move. So it feels a lot like prime Dwight offensively, where you need him head of steam, going downhill, jumping over people, dunking on people, getting rebounds, playing off ball. But even then, like, Dwight still was a threat behind, like, back to the basket. He had a little bit of a hook. It wasn't like anything special, but he had a little bit there, and he had some moves. He had some moves better than Giannis does at this point.
Yeah, but that's not really saying much.
No,
Dwight Howard was pretty unskilled on the block.
I mean, both are. But my point is, like, Dwight at least had some feel of like how to get around someone or how to like creatively get around to the basket, where Giannis just looks like he's lost anytime he has to do that. And like, I think Bud, the end of the game is so frustrating to watch because it's a thing where it's like, yeah, come down and post up Giannis, which is like not a bad idea. Like, doing it once or twice is like, I would have that thought as a coach of like, okay, let's get an easy basket. Let's
it was
post
at least
up Giannis.
A change up from ISOing Giannis at the top of the key all series.
Yeah. But like, I was like, cool, let's post up Giannis. Like, this is good. Get him in a space on the floor where he's comfortable. Like, post up Giannis close to the basket. Great. Fantastic. First, he's not getting deep enough into the post to catch. He's doing the thing that Shaq and Chuck always talk about, where it's like you're catching it on the hash marks. Like, you're posting on the hash marks, so they're pushing you out to like maybe a little bit to the mid range.
Well, don't let NBA Twitter hear you giving credit to Inside the NBA. You know how they
Well,
get.
yeah, but it's true. Like when you talk about, there's an old clip, like a real old clip. They talk about they're criticizing Dwight, and
Yeah,
they're talking about how you post. You've seen this clip
I've
where
seen
you
this
post
clip,
up.
and I've been coached on this because I was a
Yeah,
center in high
you
school.
you you set low, and then you get pushed out to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always set deeper. So Giannis is setting up where he wants to be, but he's getting pushed out, and then when he catches, he's already too far from where he can make a move.
Mm-hmm.
So like the thing is, he's so uncomfortable and looks so uncoordinated that he's taking away fadeaway jumpers over a one-legged James Harden. And you're
Yeah,
like, dude, that's an easy drop step or power move to the basket.
James Harden waved off Landry Shamet mid post up too. He's like,
Yeah,
bruh, he's gonna take a fadeaway. Get the fuck out of here. Like, don't
or
double.
get the rebound.
Yeah,
And he's
exactly.
like, and you're like, it's such an easy drop step post move away from a dunk. And you're just like, I don't get why. Okay, and then once it doesn't work like 3 or 4 times, if it doesn't work, then you move to making him off ball, like you would Steph, where you're like, okay, just set screens, get him moving, get him open, get him ahead of steam, get him a step to the basket.
Yep.
And it's like, no, we're not going to run him off ball. We're just going to keep doing this post up until it works.
Or
Spoiler, it
we're
didn't
gonna
work.
or we're gonna keep Giannis out on the perimeter. That's the
Yeah,
So this is the frustrating thing, right? Like, clearly in game one, at least in game one, because game two was a absolute blowout. Like, I'm not even gonna mention game two. But game one, it was very apparent that the Bucks could get whatever they want in the paint. Lopez, Giannis on screen and roll, whatever. And for whatever reason, they don't stick to the formula. Like, Giannis should be running a bunch of pick and rolls as the 5. Like, Drew Holiday, Chris
yeah,
Middleton, like, there's no reason they shouldn't be running pick and roll. There's no reason that whenever Brook Lopez has a mismatch on him off of a switch, that he's floating out to the 3-point line, even though he's a good 3-point shooter. And I'm a proponent of centers shooting threes. It's just the Nets have they're so thin inside that it would be like 80% of your shot diet should be near the basket. Like, Lopez is a good post player. He's been posting up more this year and last year than the first year when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2019, where he was exclusively a shooter. And he's back to the 2019 Brook Lopez, who was a good 3-point shooter, but you'll live with Brook Lopez shooting threes out there when you got Kevin Durant, who is your tallest player on the team, or on the Brooklyn Nets. You'll live with Brook Lopez shooting them. If he makes them, whatever, tip your hat to him. Like, you'll live with it. But, like, Brook Lopez was wreaking havoc whenever he got into the paint in game one. And then game 3 was a dumpster fire. And it's just a master class performance from Bud. Still playing this weird 10-man rotation. His starters aren't playing more than 35 minutes. He went back to that again, even though the last 2 games they've been playing over 40 minutes, which is good. It's a good adjustment, but it's so obvious. And last game was so mind-blowing because even though the Bucks built up this 17-point lead, I didn't like the process of it. Like,
it was sloppy.
The process was sloppy. They got hot. They made some really tough jumpers. And Giannis wasn't posting up or screening and rolling. Brook Lopez was out there, was spacing the floor, shooting threes, quick in the shot clock. They weren't attacking a one-legged James Harden. Like, from opening tip, when did you notice that James Harden, when did it become apparent to you that James Harden couldn't move? That's a question for you. When did it become apparent for you that he couldn't move in the game?
Well, first quarter.
Yeah, opening
You could
tip.
tell.
Like,
Yeah, you
from
could tell
opening
he
tip,
couldn't
you
move.
could tell he couldn't
He wasn't
move.
driving to the basket. You
Yep.
could tell because he wasn't driving to the basket. He'd have like the room to do it and like the lane, and he just wouldn't do it. And you're like, he never does that.
And the cadence to his step back was off. He was missing far left and stuff. Like, you could tell James Harden was not himself. And what does Bud do? Not attack James Harden. If Chris Paul was in this series, Chris Paul would be running James Harden through the mud in pick and roll. He would be like, no, we are scrap what Bud says. We are picking on this dude.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the way they use Giannis, it gave Harden an easy person to guard
Mm-hmm.
because it was just like because Giannis just sits there until he gets the ball and then he moves,
And by the way,
and so
on
it's
that
like,
post fadeaway you were talking about, Harden is a good post defender. Like for all the shit he rightfully gets on defense, he's a good post defender and he has lightning quick hands. So
yeah,
that's a win for the Nets. As soon as Giannis posted up Harden and even before Harden waved off Shamet, I was like, this is a win for the Nets. I don't care if Giannis makes this shot. Like, this is a win for the Nets. Like, Giannis is way far off of his spot more than he wants to, and then he settled for a fadeaway. Like, it's Bud and Doc are just incredible to me, like in the most unspectacular and very bad ways, right? Like, that's why this is going to be interesting because I retweeted somebody who was saying like even if the Bucks won the finals somehow, I would fire Bud after the season.
yeah,
Like I would. And Jeff Van Gundy can go on Zach Lowe's podcast and defend coaches like he always does all he wants to. But dog, we see the game. We see the game. We see the tape. Like
yeah,
this, and if you look at Bucks Twitter, this was every Bucks fan's fear. Like playoff Bud has reared his ugly head in the worst way. And it was a historic collapse until, last night.
yeah. I was very shocked watching the game of just like there's no movement to their offense. There's no, and the thing is like it's so frustrating because they have the pieces to do that.
You don't think to double Kevin Durant? You don't think to, maybe not
Put
have
Giannis on him.
Yeah, and even if Giannis is more of because Giannis can't really navigate screens well, and Kevin Durant has cooked him sometimes one on
But
one.
he's long
He's
enough
long
to bother.
He's long. Kevin Durant can't post him up like he was posting up PJ Tucker because PJ Tucker was in his jersey in the games in Milwaukee, and then Kevin Durant adjusted and was like, "Let me get the ball on the block and shoot over him." And let me be a little bit more physical on the drive. You can't do that exactly with Giannis. Kevin Durant might blow by him. Kevin Durant might score over him, but he's Kevin Durant. You got to try all kinds of things. I'm not saying Giannis would have shut him down, but running the same coverage and having Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker, and Chris Middleton all get roasted while Brook Lopez is in a drop coverage on at this point, Kevin Durant is on fire. As Chuck would say on Inside the NBA, the house is on fire. Get the women and the kids out. Like, get everybody out of the house.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant is on fire.
Like, if he's gonna blow past Giannis, at least you'll have like Brook or a secondary defender behind to cover. That's the way you play that because you need to have him just hit bodies because you just want someone else to shoot. Harden can't shoot at this point. So what? You're gonna let Durant beat you, or are you gonna give it to Joe Harris and try to let him go off?
And yeah, that's the other thing too. This is handed to the Bucks on a silver platter. James Harden hurts his hamstring in the first 40 seconds of Game 1. Kyrie Irving has a bad ankle sprain. Joe Harris has turned whatever the pumpkin carriage was in Cinderella, he turned it to the rotten pumpkin after midnight. Like, Joe Harris has been bad in this series. It's shooting wise and everything. And this is on a silver platter for the Bucks, and they can't get out of their own way. And it's players, but it's Mike Budenholzer. He has to go. Like, it's over.
Well, this is what we talked about before, where we just didn't trust the Bucks. So this might be a hot take. I'm like 90% all in on the Suns winning the finals.
No, I am too. They got to be the favorites. I don't think that's a hot take. I think you're correct. They're the favorites.
I'm so in on the Suns winning the finals. And the thing is, even if Chris Paul has COVID and takes 2 weeks off, I think that's fine.
Yeah, because
that's more rest
more rest, like you saw in the Nuggets series. And by the way, I'll take the L on the Nuggets series. Like, I don't know what it is. I thought I tried to do the best player in the best series thing, but the Suns have been the most complete team in the playoffs.
Yes.
Like, it's not even close. Like, the Bucks have looked. Sorry, go ahead.
All good. My thing is, like, they have their most complete team. They have the youngest legs, and they have the best leader that's left in the playoffs.
Yep.
They have Monty Williams is, given the coaching we've seen so far, probably the best coach left in this series in this playoffs.
Yep.
And
Well,
they're playing.
Him and Ty Lue.
They're,
I've
yeah,
been really impressed with Ty Lue.
they're playing free and loose. And to me, a lot of it comes down to Ayton too, of like who's going to guard Ayton.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton has been he grew up in this series. I'm really happy because I had Ayton stock. I had Ayton over Luka at first.
Oh, we both did.
In that 28 when that 2018
So
draft
did
was
I.
being scouted, and then by the end of it, I
I
was
love
like,
Ayton.
by the end of it, I was like, okay, I can't have Ayton over Luka because this guy is good. Like, but
I still like Ayton though.
oh
But the
yeah,
thing is, like,
I love Ayton. Like he has the
the
physical tools and everything.
so like when we start to get into like matchups, like the Nets can't really don't really have a body for Ayton.
Nope.
The Bucks really don't have a body for Ayton other than Giannis. But again, like
And Brooke
then we have
Lopez.
other. Oh yes, but again, Brooks going to stand out there, and
Yeah.
whatever. Like there's no physical matchup for Ayton in the Clippers matchups.
Mm-hmm.
There's Gobert for the Jazz, but I don't know if that's going to work out.
I think the Suns are beating whoever. Well, now that Kawhi's hurt, because I actually thought the
Yeah.
Clippers were the worst matchup for the Suns. Now that Kawhi's hurt, the Suns, it would kind of be a failure if the Suns didn't make the finals. Because with the Jazz,
Yeah.
Conley's out, Mitchell's hurt, and Mitchell's
I
clear.
do want to bring up Gobert. I do want to bring up Gobert too.
Oh yes, we will bring up Gobert.
For a defensive player of the year, back to back defensive player of the year, he gets hunted more than any defensive player of the year I've ever seen.
So Draymond brought up this point on Inside the NBA, and by the way, Draymond Green is going to be awesome in TV
As an analyst,
He's one of the smartest players I've ever watched, and the way he talks the game is really good. It's not that the Clippers abused Gobert or whatever. It's just that if you get Gobert's a great defender in terms of rim protection, shutting off the paint, which is probably the most important thing in the NBA.
Sure.
And I was actually going to make the point earlier with Ben Simmons that we can have all the perimeter defense you want. If you're not going to do shit from the perimeter on the other end, then that doesn't really matter because Joel Embiid can prop you up because rim protection is the one thing that can prop up an average defense just by itself, right?
Yeah.
But like,
you take away the easiest shot.
Even if Gobert will win a few matchups when he switches out or whatever, you're still having Gobert out there uncomfortable in space, which he is not good. Which he's not good at. And I was watching the game this morning, and there were 5 or 6 times where the Clippers beat Gobert off the dribble and were able to do the quick layup over him, or the quick scoop off the wrong foot or whatever, or shield their body from the shot blocker. Paul George was getting a few nice passes off on the Gobert switch. Reggie Jackson too. Like, it's not that Gobert isn't still a great defender in the playoff. The problem the problem I think with I know you're not saying that, but I think the problem with Gobert, I don't look at the offensive end or the defensive end. I'm looking at the offensive end because I saw this stat when Gobert is on the court in this series, the Jazz defensive rating, it's 121, which is still high, but when Gobert is off the court, it's 142 for the Jazz. Yeah. So but either way, the defensive rating is still really, really high, higher than what it should be. But on the offensive end, it's the same. It's 111.3 when Gobert is on the court, and I think a 111.8 when he's off the court. The Clippers have been going small, and Gobert has not been able to punish them on the offensive end because he has no discernible offensive skills. He's a lob threat. He can crash the offensive glass, but every time he flashes to the lane, nobody wants to pass it to him because he's already being covered. He can't really seal a guy under the basket like a Joel Embiid or a Nikola Jokic or even an Anthony Davis or a DeAndre Ayton, by the way.
Well, that's what I was saying, where for me, when someone's defensive player of the year, even I understand rim protection to me. Yes, it's the most important part of a defense, and probably the most important thing playing defense in the NBA is rim protection.
Yep.
But when I look at play, like I look at Anthony Davis, I look at Joel Embiid, I look at even Ben Simmons, I look at uh, someone like Drew Holiday, I look at guys like even
Draymond.
DeAndre Ayton, Draymond. Like these are all guys that can play that can defend perimeter and in the at the rim protection that have great switchable tools 1 through 5 almost
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of situations. So why does Gobert keep winning these Defensive Player of the Year awards when he's clearly not the best defender in the NBA?
Yeah. That's a good question. It'll also
You know what I'm
depend on
saying
how.
though?
I
Like
do.
I think that the metrics skew really in favor of rim protection and guys that sit in the
Yeah.
paint.
They do.
And to me, that's if we're just relying on those metrics, that's a flawed system that we should be looking at.
Yeah, because well, because the history of rim protection, like we do agree it's the most important thing. I am trying to be a little bit fair to Gobert here because historically, if you could deter somebody from the paint and just leave them out on the perimeter, that's a win for the
Yeah.
defense because once you get into the paint, everything opens up. And it's not even just blocking shots. If you have the intimidator badge in 2K, everybody's gonna turn back, right?
Yeah. Again,
It's
I totally get that. But the thing is, like when you bring up like Aiton, Embiid,
yep.
Anthony Davis, they do that as well. But they can also switch out and guards for short periods of time if you
Yeah,
need them
they
to.
could. Yeah, they could do it longer than Gobert, but I don't think you want Embiid, Davis, or Aiton out there every possession.
No,
'Cause
no, no,
I think
no, no.
they'll get cooked anyway.
Yeah, that's not my point. That's not
Yeah,
the point. I'm
I
just
get
saying,
what
like
you're
in
saying
general,
though.
I would rather I would trust them more than Gobert to go out there and guard a guard for a period of time, or at least
Right,
not look as lost.
right. Yeah, and yeah, I totally get it. And well, it's a regular season award, so I also get it. I also get why. I think one day these awards should just be all season, or we should just have
Yeah,
separate playoff awards if we really want to do that.
like
Um,
to me, this was the biggest thing with everyone brings up the shot blocking and the rim protection with like Prime Dwight. But dude, to me, the most important thing with Prime Dwight was the athleticism and the ability for him to move his feet.
Oh yeah, I saw
Prime
somebody
Dwight
tried to
had
compare
quick
somebody tried to
feet.
compare Gobert to Gobert's defensive player of the years to Dwight Howard's, and I'm like, nah, Dwight Howard
No, 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 no,
was
no.
the best defender in the NBA he won 3 straight in a row, and you could see it on film, eye
Like
test,
clearly.
whatever. It was clear, like he was an
And the
intimidator,
thing was,
everything.
he was keeping up with guards and like legitimately guarding guards on the switch and being able to get back to his defender and the guard
Yeah,
the rim.
wasn't as much back then, but he could do it.
Yeah. And then he could do like even going back to like KG too. When you watch KG as a
Oh
defender,
yeah.
oh my God.
Hmm.
And so now when you put these awards in place and you're like Gobert's now in this realm of defender, you're like, no, he's not.
That's one Hall of Famer I want to see transported from a time machine to this era. Is KG?
Garnett.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. He would be, especially since he'd be shooting threes too. He'd be a monster. He would make Anthony Davis look. He would be what everybody wants Anthony Davis to be.
Yes.
Like pretty easy.
He'd be Anthony Davis with consistency.
He'd be Anthony Davis 3.0. Like
Yeah.
I love KG. He's underrated. Even though the Leprechaun stuff was stupid with the Kyrie stepping on the logo
Yes.
and KG being like, "Don't step
100%.
on Lucky." I did not know that Leprechaun's name was Lucky until
Name
Kevin
was Lucky,
Garnett
yeah.
said something. Like who gives a
Same.
shit?
Same thing. I didn't know. I was like, whatever. Now I have a name for my hatred. That's fine.
It's like, okay, Lucky? Oh, all right. It's a Leprechaun dog.
But yeah, that was for the thing of like I'm watching this game and I'm like, this is your. It was that
It was,
meme.
is
It
this
was
your
like,
king?
This is your defensive player of the year.
Yep.
This
Yep.
right,
Yeah.
and he's getting cooked. And the thing is, again, I'm not saying that he has to be perfect, but when you're the defensive player of the year
Mm-hmm.
and you're being hunted,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
that's not a thing.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And I'm not going to name any names, but there are some certain jazz bloggers, some prominent jazz bloggers on Twitter that just they're in stuff. well, mainly SLC Dunk. I don't know how bad it is lately because I haven't looked at their stuff for a few years, but I know they're still insufferable. And I know there's a few Jazz bloggers that I see their tweets, and they are absolutely insufferable whenever you criticize Gobert. Like, somebody had the audacity to say, look at Gobert is getting hunted like the last 5 minutes of this game.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, he's not. They're running pick and roll away from him. I'm like, it's not about running.
No, they're running it at him.
It's not and even then, it's not about running a pick and roll away from Gobert. There are times where the ball swings and whoever Gobert is guarding, whether it was Batum splashing threes in his face, whether it was Terrence Mann yamming it all over his grill, like, they're attacking Gobert. And yeah, Gobert will win some battles, but they are making it a point. They went small.
To go at him.
And like I said, I don't think defense. I didn't look at the defensive side as a problem as much as you did. I looked at it offensively.
The offensive thing is a given to me.
He is so like. I know it's a given, but I think it's worse. Like it's worse than the. I think it's more important than the defensive side because it's like the Clippers are clearly. There were possessions.
What was the argument Jazz fans brought up of the screen data? That he's the best screener in the NBA.
The screen assist bullshit. Like,
yeah.
Get out of here.
There you go.
I love that Zach Lowe called that out too. The reason Zach Lowe's my favorite writer, or one of my favorite writers, I think he's the best basketball writer on the planet, is because he's able to mix the X's and O's, the analytics, and the fandom of basketball, and the fun and magic that comes with basketball. Like, he's an overall fan, and he encapsulates that so well in words that I wish I had like a tenth of his talent, right? And even on his podcast, he's like, screen assists are banned from this podcast. He's like, I do not want to hear the word screen assist. And so it's now banned from his podcast because, like, you'd see stuff like John Hollinger, who is a respected executive. I get it. But he's really trying to galaxy brain himself and be like, I'm smarter than you by putting Gobert as second in your MVP voting. That's ridiculous. Like, Gobert is a really good player. The Jazz offense and defense actually hinges on Gobert because Gobert, I don't want to say screen assist, but those screens on offense really do help. But the problem is when the Clippers switch that and Gobert is flashing to the middle and he has Batum or Paul George on his backside, he cannot do anything with the ball. And he has stone hands unless he's catching a rebound or blocking a shot. And you could see on offensive possessions, he would get the offensive rebound and a putback dunk because he's bigger than everybody. But that's about the only thing you're going to get out of Gobert utilizing his size against the Clippers on the other end. Like, this is why I picked the Clippers. I know you picked the Jazz in 7. This is why I picked the Clippers in 6 because I just think Ty Lue is just going to press the right buttons and be able to exploit Gobert because he's now the Jazz.
Totally fair.
I know the Jazz are in, and by the way, the Jazz could still win this series. It's not like I'm, taking a victory lap on you or anything like that. It's just the fact that, Gobert is so important to the Jazz, but the Clippers have ways to render him limited, and it affects the Jazz as a whole. Now, not having Mike Conley hurts really bad for the Jazz also. And Mitchell not being 100% is not ideal for the Jazz either because he hurt his ankle again after playing like an absolute superstar so far. It's just going to be really tough.
Can we talk about the start of that Clippers Jazz game last night? Of like,
I
tweeted about it.
That was ridiculous.
Tweeted about it. I was like, did someone mess with the sliders?
Someone messed with the 2K sliders.
Like, are they playing on rookie? Like, they were hit. They were
Bojan
so
Bogdanovic
hot.
was on rookie mode, like, or playing. Looked like he was playing on rookie mode. He was just knocking threes down left and right in the first half, but 17 threes. But in the second half, how many? I think they went 0 for 10 in the third quarter. And then they
got cold.
And then they went 2 for 5, I think, in the fourth quarter. And they still had a chance to win this game. But when you don't have your with that particular team, if you don't have your full complement of players or have a compromised Donovan Mitchell, who's your best player, I think, then
Some would say the best player in the franchise.
I mean, Stephen A. Smith is wrong, but I want to agree with that take so bad. Like I want to agree with that take so bad because one, Karl
I
Malone
think
is
it's way too early.
I think Karl Malone is
I
an awful human being, but I mean
Yes.
the numbers are the numbers, and
I
he,
mean,
yeah,
to me, it's not even Karl Malone. I'm still a big Stockton believer.
oh yeah, the
I
John
still
Stockton,
think
yeah,
I still think Stockton made Malone more than Malone made Stockton.
yeah,
Let's all like
I would
die
agree
on
with
this
that.
hill.
I would agree with that to some extent, yeah.
So, you know,
I think it went both
I'm a
ways.
I'm a big Stockton person. So like I just believe like when you watch footage of Stockton, I think that he was limited by the Jerry Sloan system. Like I think he was an above average shooter. Like he's better than he showed. I think he could definitely score the ball more consistently than he showed, but that wasn't the offense.
I
And so
agree,
like you know,
but when you look back at it though, I can't help but think that we're looking back at that with the lens that we have now. Because like you could say that for every
yeah,
team in the
oh
'90s,
definitely,
yeah. But I get what
yeah,
you
yeah. But like
I get
I
you.
I like
It's
just
the Steve
watching it. I'm
Nash
like, dude,
conundrum.
yeah. I'm just like, dude, he could do so much more
Mm-hmm.
than what he's allowed to do within the system.
Yep,
And I'm like,
I agree.
oh, well, you know. So for me, like it's Stockton, and there's no contest. Like I'm not a Malone person. Well,
Right.
just because he's a piece of shit human, but also like I would take Barkley in that era over him. Um,
Absolutely. I don't even I
like, and
to me it's
I don't
no
understand the
contest.
argument. Like, dude, if you swap Barkley and Malone, I think the Jazz win
Yo,
championships. Like,
yo, like if you swapped Barkley with Malone and paired him with Stockton, they would be they might have a championship. Michael Jordan would still probably have five,
have the
but like
majority of them. Yeah,
he would have five maybe, but yeah, I would take Barkley over Malone easy. Barkley was a freak, like he was a freak
yeah,
by
100%.
even '80s or '90s standards.
Yeah.
But
I'll take Charles over him. I think like again Duncan Garnett. They talk about fours, right? I'd take Duncan Garnett. I'd even
mhm.
take AD skill wise. Like I don't know.
Wait, you would
You
take
know,
Anthony Davis over Charles Barkley?
no Malone.
Oh,
I'm talking
Malone.
about Malone.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, wait, what?
I just don't. No, no, no. Like when I'm talking about fours, like I Malone's actually pretty low on my list of like all time fours.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you know
Like Scottie Pippen said,
that's
the
just.
mailman don't deliver on Sundays.
It's such a good line.
What was that? Oh yeah,
Okay, so I
this
know.
is what I
So
wanted to
we're
say first before we continue. How about playoff P?
putting up work finally.
He's been good.
What a performance!
So I know he was bad in game 1. I believe it was game 1. Game 2 he was okay, but the last 3 games he's been spectacular, and he's really been spectacular all playoffs. And now that he's finally healthy and or is healthy enough during the playoffs, I know he's dealing with that toe endemia or whatever it's called. He's been playing well.
Gross.
He's been playing really well. And the fact that Kawhi was out, I know the Wolves were going to come out if Paul George didn't show up. He played
Yeah.
He played the perfect balance of attack the rim, take my pull up pull up off the dribble jumper from the mid range and from 3. I'm going to post up Royce O'Neal. I'm going to get into pick and roll and distribute. He threaded the needle finally in a high pressure situation in game 5 on the road. It was Indiana Paul George and
Yes, I'll give him
and
full credit
2019
for
Paul
this one.
George.
So the thing that I will say is I will give him full credit, and he played fantastic. But with Kawhi out, I still don't see him carrying this team.
We'll see. He's been doing his part carrying the Clippers
Yeah.
in these playoffs. So we'll see. The Clippers are at home, so it should be a little. They don't have to play in the hostile environment of Utah, but for this game in particular, Paul George was incredible. What he had 36 points, he had 16 rebounds, and he was all over the
It's a lot
place
of
on the
rebounds.
defensive end, and he had 5 assists. There were some shaky moments in the fourth quarter, but I think when the game got close, he had a post up on Royce O'Neal that was clutch.
Dude, I don't know what it is with Paul George. Every time fourth quarter close game,
He
makes some weird turnovers.
He did have some weird turnovers in the fourth quarter. He did.
Like he had that in the last series, in the Maverick series, where like fourth quarter, and like you're like, all right, crunch time, here we go. He'll just have some wonky turnovers where you're like, oh man, there's playoff P, and then he'll come back with like a clutch shot or something like that. But you're like, man, what happened before?
Yep. He definitely had some he had some weird passes, but he had some clutch shots too. He posted up Royce O'Neal with like I mean it was like 112 to 1. It was like 110 to 108 or something like that. And Paul George posted up Royce O'Neal and got the foul and hit a bucket over.
Yeah, that was
pretty
much the game.
And that was ball game, like his Gatorade commercial.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Because at that point, then that kind of took the wind out of any kind of comeback sail.
It was a great performance from Paul George, and once again, Ty Lue, the mad scientist, pushing all the buttons. Terrence Mann, you're gonna start. I'm gonna bring back Rajon Rondo after getting 3 straight DMPs. This is what I respect about Ty Lue. Because I never really... some of it was fair and a lot of it wasn't, but he really is good. He's really an underrated coach. And I think some of it, he got flack for, being the coach of LeBron or whatever. But, like, he made tactical adjustments in the 2016 finals that enabled the Cavs to win.
Yeah.
And he is known to just try shit. And I respect that. Sometimes it might be crazy. Like a mad scientist, sometimes you'll put an extra chemical in the beaker that you don't expect and it blows up in your face.
Yeah, you're putting chemical extra and you make the Powerpuff Girls.
I could hum the theme song right now, but then I'd really show my nerdum off here. It'll blow up in his face.
What this podcast is, my friend.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It sometimes it'll blow up in his face, but at least I can respect the fact that he tried it. Like, if Plan A doesn't work, okay, you know what? Let's pull some levers here. Let's see DeMarcus Cousins. Let's see you body up Rudy Gobert. Okay, you really can't move on the other end of the floor, so we're gonna take you out. We're gonna Patrick Beverley didn't play after Game 1 in the last series. Ivica Zubac got benched in the last series, pretty much. And then in this series, when the matchup called for it, because it's a different team, different matchup, Patrick Beverley comes in, and he's effective. Even Patrick Beverley. And Ivica Zubac is effective. Last night, Patrick Beverley was mostly good. He was mostly effective. Yeah, he did his Patrick Beverley bullshit, but he was effective. And this, don't want to try to circle it back to the Sixers and Bud, but like Bucks fans and Sixer fans are watching their coaches just absolutely not do anything besides being rah-rah, clap your hands, come on, let's go, guys, yell at you during a timeout when the opposing team makes a run. Ty Lue's like, okay, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Okay, that didn't work. Halftime. Okay, let's make this adjustment. It works. And then the Jazz go on a little run. Okay, what do we do here? Like, Ty Lue and Monty Williams have been really impressive to me. And as much as I would like to see a Jazz Suns series, because I think that would be the most fun, I would have loved to see a full strength Clippers versus the Suns, because I think the coaching matchup would have been great. There's too many injuries in these playoffs, man. Like, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, I think we both agree that the injuries suck. So we're getting a little long here. I do want to bring up one more topic before we end this off.
Yes, because we got to watch I hope to watch the Bucks collapse.
Yeah, so we got to get out of here. But I got to bring up this Luka talk because this is so interesting to me, and it's something that
we did say we were going to go over the avalanche of NBA news. So let's do the quick hitters.
So quick hitters, obviously injury stuff we don't need to go over. Coach is getting fired. I don't think we expected most of these.
I didn't expect Stan Van Gundy to be fired this soon.
The Stan Van Gundy one, but there's rumors now that Zion wants out, so they gotta keep him happy, whatever.
Yeah, his family's unhappy.
Yeah, so, whatever, that's fine. Again, these aren't super obvious. The weird ones to me are the Mavericks ones, because obviously Donnie Nelson's out as the GM, and then Rick Carlisle said today that he's out as the coach. Again, he said he left. I don't know how mutual that is. But
So it
whatever.
turns out Tim Cato, the reporter for The Athletic, who dropped that story about 4 days ago about how
Yeah.
Haralabos Vulgaris, who I was a frequent guest in the old BS podcast days when it was the BS Report, and now he got hired by the Mavericks a few years ago. Apparently, he's basically the GM now. So, one, I want to thank Haralabob for Seth Curry and taking on Josh Richardson, because I know Haralabob was probably like, oh, yeah, get this guy. But Tim Cato reported it. Mark Cuban called it total bullshit on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it turns out it wasn't total bullshit. It turns out Tim Cato is actually what we all already know he is.
Well, remember,
is a reputable reporter.
Remember, Mark Cuban also did not know this huge sexual harassment scandal that was going under his nose, apparently.
Exactly. He touts himself as the most hands-on owner in the NBA, and yet there was this giant sexual assault scandal that was going on right under his nose.
Yeah, so, take it with a grain of salt.
I'm taking it with all the grains of salt.
So the thing I do want to bring up is, this is really, so my favorite thing was, I saw a tweet that said, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to the Mavericks for Luka Doncic, like Mavs fans. And then someone quote tweeted, said, no, the worst thing would be when Luka signs with Clutch Sports. And it's like, damn. It's good for me.
I'm actually, well, yeah, obviously it's good for you. Laker fans are already photoshopping jerseys. I saw, what was his name? Anthony Irwin. I don't follow the dude, but I saw his.
Oh, the Luka.
Yeah, I saw his really
Zion
poorly
one.
photoshopped Zion Luka Microsoft Paint jerseys. That
Yes.
story is wild, by the way, because I'm reading the story and I'm reading about why players don't like him, why front office players don't like him. And it makes total sense, because if you listen to him on past podcasts, he's off-putting as hell, and he's arrogant as hell, and he speaks about basketball in such a matter-of-fact way. Look, I get it. He's a smart basketball mind, and he has had a lot of success as a gambler. To be fair, I think once you get to a certain point, you do speak arrogantly about basketball. Like Daryl Morey, to a certain extent, when you listen to him on podcasts, and interviews, Daryl Morey is kind of a matter-of-fact guy about basketball. It's in a funny way. It's in a funny way, though.
It is in a funny way.
But
it is. But
Vulgaris is just, he'll personally attack you if you don't know anything. I remember one time Bill Simmons said something about Joe Ingles. It was back in 2017 or something like that. Bill Simmons tweeted something about Joe Ingles, and then Haralabob quote tweeted him, and he was like, "Okay, kid," and he quickly deleted it. But it was like, "Nah, dog, we all saw you." I don't know if anybody else remembers, but we saw. I get it. When you reach a higher status, you might have a little bit more ego. I hope that doesn't happen with me. I don't think it will.
No.
And I don't want it to. But when you hear the way he talks, and he speaks in such a robotic way about basketball, that it's he doesn't. He forgets the human elements. It makes sense why players don't like him. It makes sense why Luka Doncic cussed him out in the middle of a game. Tim McMahon reported, or he said on the Zach Lowe podcast, I haven't heard the podcast, but, people on Twitter will transcribe it. Apparently, during a game, Luka Doncic looked at Mark Cuban. It was Mark Cuban or Donnie Nelson, and he was basically like, who's in charge, you or Vulgaris or whatever? And it was okay, it's like that. And when you think about the way, when you hear Vulgaris on podcasts and stuff like that from the past, it kind of makes sense why he rubs players and people the wrong way. It is a people business at the end of the day,
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think the thing here that's interesting to me is Luka is in prime. The Mavericks and Luka are in prime position to be the face of the NBA when LeBron's gone.
Mm-hmm.
They are in prime position here to take that mantle and to be sort of this shining star of the league.
Oh,
and
man. I agree with you, but I wish injuries were. If injuries are the only thing holding Joel Embiid back from, to me, being clear cut the best player in the world, I think him and Kevin Durant are the best players in the world right now. LeBron is grandfathered. Kevin Durant and LeBron are grandfathered in. And I think Embiid, on a permanent basis when he's on the court, is the best player in the world. But health is really the only thing holding Embiid back from just being, the face of the NBA and just this mega star. I think it would be clear cut he would be the best player in the world if health wasn't an issue, obviously. But I agree with your sentiments on Luka.
They are set up so perfectly, and it's like if they fuck this up, could you imagine if they fuck this up?
Oh,
they're fucking it up. They really are. Kings
fans will turn into the live version of that meme where the guy on the ship has like the noose around his neck and he's like, first time.
Yeah.
Because the Kings fans thought they were getting Doncic, and about a week out they realized they weren't getting Doncic, and it was
Luka's gonna ship off to like New York or LA.
Well, think about Zion.
Yeah. Like Zion's the same thing. Like if these orgs don't start shaping up, like they're gonna lose out on their.
I told you, man. I wasn't a fan of these signings. I wasn't sure about those signings, man. Like you can't. You have Brandon Ingram and Zion, and you're instead of surrounding him with shooting and defense, you add Steven Adams, who's a plotting big who can't really move on the perimeter, and you add Eric fucking Bledsoe to the team. You trade for Eric Bledsoe, and Eric Bledsoe is a disaster. The Pelicans better shape up soon, because I also think David Griffin's really overrated as a GM. I respect that he built a championship team around LeBron, and as a GM, you are supposed to go all in and sacrifice everything.
Well, that was the weird thing when he made the comments of building around a team around LeBron isn't fun, and I was like, well, that's your fucking it's your job.
That's
You're
your
not
job. And by the way, you don't have LeBron and you have a young team, and you're not doing a good job so far. Zion and Brandon Ingram are already pissed.
Yeah, so I just don't get it. Whatever. So my main thing is these young kids aren't I think nowadays they understand with all of, especially now during COVID and with all these injuries in the shortened season, they're understanding that their careers can be cut short at any point in time, or take a significant turn at any point in time, and so they're not waiting around for you to figure out your shit.
By the way, they're not gonna leave for 5 or 6 years, because there's no way they're turning down the extra 20-25 million they're going to get from the team that drafted them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about worrying what it's like when they're 26, 27.
And they're going to make their lives an absolute hell the entire time that they're here. If you're not willing to build, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on you. Yep. And then if you're not able to do it and they leave anyway, you're going to be left with scraps, and you're going to get screwed because you're not going to have draft picks, because you're going to trade them all to try to make him happy, and that's not going to work.
Yep. And it's funny because I also saw a report that Zion and RJ have been talking about playing together a lot. And that actually makes... Of course they are talking about it because they're best friends. They played together at Duke, and they've always talked about it, even in their Duke days. But Zion was already he when he said it's the Mecca, when he had those comments where he's like, it's the Mecca, it's the New York Knicks and all that stuff, the clock is already ticking in New Orleans, and Zion's gonna have what? Let's see, he's gonna have 2 coaches in 2 years already.
Yeah,
that's
certainly
crazy.
Not a good look.
And for Brandon Ingram, how many coaches is he going to have? That's 3 coaches in 4 years for Brandon Ingram?
Yeah.
Yikes, man.
You're stunting the growth of these kids.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Pelicans still have draft picks, but when you look at the trades they've made, the players they've signed, and David Griffin's acumen as a GM might apply to different situations at other organizations than maybe a young rebuilding team. I don't know, man. It could be another Anthony Davis situation. John Hollinger actually just said that the Pelicans are likely a front runner to relocate in 2024.
Oh my God.
Or within the next decade, because their lease expires in 2024, and he said that they are the most likely to relocate in the next decade. Bring it back to Seattle.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, remember, there's that talk of expansion with Seattle and Vegas, so
I would love that.
We'll see with that.
I want to go to.
We'll see what happens there.
I want to go to summer league. I can't go this summer, but next summer.
Summer league's great. I've been. We used to time it where we used to go to summer league every year.
Yep.
It's a good time. It's a real good time. That's where I saw.
It looks like basketball at Disney World, probably.
I was at that legendary John Wall Jeremy Lin matchup game.
Yeah. I remember we were talking about it on an earlier episode. Summer league, man. That used to be the Sixers Super Bowl whenever we were drafting players.
Drafting super high.
Like, I remember when we drafted Markelle Fultz. I've told this story about like how I wrote a 2,000-word piece on Markelle Fultz, and I was ecstatic when we traded for him and stuff. That first summer league game against the Celtics, I was like, oh, it's over. We got the guy. Like, he was doing everything he did at Washington, except he was hitting NBA threes. Like, the way he started summer league in Utah was great. And then when they moved to Vegas, he sprained his ankle in the first game really badly because, of course, the Sixers always get hurt. And then we never saw him again, and he came back to training camp with a jacked up shooting form, to say the least.
Oh, it's so sad.
So I will always have the first game of the 2017 Summer League to remember against the Celtics. Still watch those highlights. That, and I'm sure Sixer fans are going back to Ben Simmons' 2016 Summer League highlights to cope with what's been happening the last two games. By the way, I think even the staunchest, well, except for maybe Ben Dietrich of Cookies Hoops and Pablo Torre, but I think a lot of Simmons defenders have jumped ship. And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
He hasn't earned the trust of anyone that's still in this corner.
He's lost my trust completely. My trust completely. If we get another guard and somehow not give up Simmons, then we're cooking with gas. But unfortunately, with the assets we have, Ben Simmons is the best one. So you have to give him up and trade him if you want to get,
unless Tyrese Maxey becomes a god somehow.
I'm telling you, everybody on this team, except for Embiid, Seth Curry, Tyrese Maxey, and Matisse Thybulle, and Danny Green, because I love Danny Green, should be gone.
Oh, you've come full circle. Come full circle on Danny Green.
So the first two games of the Hawks series, Danny Green was terrible, but the entire season and the series before that, he was good. It's just it looks bad when he's missing threes. The problem was in the first game of the Hawks series, he wasn't guarding either. And by the way, some of that was also obviously a lot of it was Doc Rivers' fault because he left Danny Green out there when Trae Young was cooking
on an island.
He left him out there on an island. Like 19 of those 25 points came against Danny Green. But he's a really smart defender, and he's crucial to the spacing of Embiid, who needs to operate with space. And even though he'll miss threes, he's a corner three master, and he's a veteran. Like, I want Matisse Thybulle attached to Danny Green, like Master Splinter, Ninja Turtle type master apprenticeship right there, because Danny Green does have like the tricks and the cheat codes and all that stuff of being a 15-year vet that he could give Thybulle with his.
He has the vet tactics. Yeah, he has the vet moves.
Yep, the vet moves, knows certain sets teams tend to run, all that stuff, like the habits that you build.
Yeah,
I would. That's like 30% of the reason why I'd keep Danny Green there, other than the fact that he's a solid vet. He's a solid rock. Like, I don't want him running off the 3-point line and dribbling or taking that weird ass floater that he does, but I would keep Danny Green. Also, because I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to make fun of players running gate, but Danny Green has like the most, I don't know, he has like the most old man pickup game running gate in the NBA.
Yeah, like he's half trying, right?
Like he's half trying, and he's swinging his arms, like the way he swings his arms is all back and forth. You get what I'm saying? You've watched Danny Green.
No. All right. It's the guy at the 24-hour. It's the older guy at the 24-hour fitness that's wearing shorts and the headband. and just kind of he's jogging down.
Yeah, and he's jogging
He's
down
he's like in his 50s. He's jogging 3 point line.
Yep. And
He's got a little bit of a gut.
I also think the way some of these players run, and this is a really weird niche basketball thing before we go, like some of the way these players run, like I think they do it on purpose because like the way they run
To be unique.
looks cool. Because like Michael Jordan, when he ran after he scored, when he would like jog back with both his thumbs up in a closed fist, just jogging back, like it looked cool. Like I remember
Kobe did that.
Kobe did that. I remember when I was entering my freshman year of high school and I did the summer program for the high school basketball team for the Frost-Off team. That was the same year Dwayne Wade was having his insane playoff run. And I would try to imitate running like Dwayne Wade after I'd score. like he was my favorite player that year. So I like wore the high socks. I bought these like old pair of Wade Converses from when he was with Converse from Ross, and I would just run back. I would just trot back on defense like I was Dwayne Wade after I hit a post hook or whatever, and I would just run back. It's a really weird niche basketball thing that hoopers like us.
I used to do the same thing. I did the thumb thing because Kobe used to do that when he scored, or
Yep.
So you'd run back, and it's like you'd run like I call it the 8-bit Nintendo man, where his arms don't move, but you're still running.
Yeah.
So his arms are just locked in the L position with the thumbs up.
Yep. I remember Kobe had the coolest home run trot. It was the Martin Luther. I don't know if you remember this game, but it was the Martin Luther King game in 2009 against the Cavaliers, and the Lakers started pulling away in the fourth quarter, and 3 straight possessions, Kobe just hit these ridiculous shots over LeBron.
It's the ones over LeBron, right?
Yeah, but the one I was talking about, it was the second one where the shot clock was running down and Kobe was on the right block, and he couldn't back LeBron down, but he obviously was carving his way out for position, and then he just quickly turned around and did this high arcing fadeaway, and it was nothing but net, and the crowd just went nuts. And the way Kobe was running back alongside LeBron, like he had his hand out, like his hand spread out, like he was just like, ooh yeah, I just hit that shit right in front of you. It was sick, I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, damn, I remember watching that and I was like, damn, LeBron got. And then the next possession down, Kobe hit this ridiculous runner and one. The first possession was a 3.
The 3 was the first one.
And then the fadeaway was the next one. And then Kobe dribbled on the left side, the next possession down, and he drove at LeBron, but it wasn't towards the rim. It was towards out of bounds. And Kobe did like this running leaner with his right hand out of bounds, and it was an and one. He did the verbal, hey! And the refs called the foul, and it was sick. It was a sick, like, 3 straight possessions. I was like, damn. Because LeBron hit a 3 right back in one of those, but Kobe was just like, nah.
Kobe in that era, Kobe was so confident in like just being able to do whatever the fuck he wanted. It was insane to watch.
Yep. That was after he got his 4th championship. That was when he was like, I got it without Shaq.
He was on cloud 9. Couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, after he got his 4th championship, he had
that boost.
He had that boost. He was like, I got one without Shaq. Hey Shaq, tell me how my ass tastes. Even though Kobe didn't say that song, that was Shaq. But Kobe was he was confident that year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, Nets Bucks is about to start, so we're gonna hop out of here, catch that, and hopefully watch Bud choke another one away.
I can't believe I'm saying this like 3 years later, but I want Bud fired as much as I wanted Jason Kidd fired. I never thought I'd see the day.
All right, well, we're gonna head out. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
The B.O.B. Sixers in 7, hopefully.